Now Taxes is 100% free when you file in the TurboTax app if you didn't file with us last year.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, just do your own taxes in the app by 2/18.
What if I have lots of forms?
All good, all 100% free.
What if I had 3 jobs?
Still 100% free.
What if I once saw Bigfoot?
That has nothing to do with taxes, so still 100% free.
Now that's what I'm talking about.
Now this is Taxes. See if you qualify in the TurboTax app. Excludes TurboTax Live, must start and file in app by 2/18.
This is a More Than Just Podcast production.
Welcome to Spotcast Season 7, Episode 14. My name is Tim Mitra. I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined for the very last time by Jonathan Kuline in Mississauga, Ontario.
Okay, you make it sound like I'm dying.
I was going to comment on the rephrasing of that until after you said,
soon to be departed.
How's it going, kids? You know, or whatever it is you say.
How's it going, kids? I'm just going to be checking my room here for laser dots on my forehead.
Yes, because Jonathan's moving.
He's going to go live in a farm upstate or up province. Maybe that's what they say in your area.
He's moving, yeah. He's moving. Well,
that's right. They're taking me to live on a farm. Isn't that the same thing as being put out of your mercy?
Yeah, and I kind of think, I wonder, like, are you actually moving north of me? I wonder. Let me get the...
That's a great question.
Well, Greg once drew a map for us with a line on it to show that, oh yeah, you are moving north from me. Mind you, it depends on which projection of the Earth you look at, right? So...
It also depends on where I'm settling. I'm temporarily moving north of you.
Well, no, I mean, but like you would have to be in Portland, Maine, to be on the same level as Portland, Maine, the same level as Toronto, right? Whereas Jaime he's north of me too, right? So
depending
Portland, Oregon on the other side too. Wow. Okay.
Depending on whereabouts in the new area, you might still be south of me.
It's hard to say. We'd have to get. I have a map with a line on it that we used as artwork on More Than Just Code, which I can look at and probably tell you better, right?
But first, maybe we should introduce our other co-host.
Yeah, are we done introducing you or belittling you?
Well, I hope for at least the short term, yes.
Well, for those of you who haven't figured it out yet, we're also joined by Jaime Lopez Jr. in Seattle, Washington.
How's it going?
Who managed to return because the government didn't shut down in the United States before Christmas, right?
They always tease that. It's a constant thing.
Yeah.
It sometimes does actually shut down, but only for a little bit.
Well, yeah, and we don't do shutdown, but we do a thing called pierogi, which we might get a pierogi government soon. Where we'll get the cream cheese out and but we don't know. We'll have to wait and see about that one too. Alrighty, so let's dig into some fact check. So I had a sort of a back and forth debate with Keen on our Slack channel about the first appearance of Clara, because I mentioned that she first appeared in the episode where she was governess, right? And turns out that, so he pointed out that, or he claimed that. So that she appeared with Matt Smith, the 11th Doctor, in the first episode of Series 7, Asylum of the Daleks, right? And he says, spoiler, in that episode she dies. Well, technically it wasn't Clara. It was Jenna Coleman, who played Oswin, who is... And in a weird circumstance, and then she was in The Snowman, which was the Christmas special that I talked about. It was her first appearance back in 2012, right? And... So that would be season 7, episode 6, technically, right? And then carrying on with Matt's. It's weird the way they do seasons. They do seasons like we do on this show, where we just they never end in calendar year per se, right? So, and she continued on, and then she finished off with Capaldi, but anyway, so it's interesting that they renamed the character of Clara Oswald to be Clara Oswin. Oswald, so that she assumes the name of I got to get this name right, otherwise you know who's going to be all over me about this. Yes, Oswin. Yes, yeah. So she becomes Clara Oswin. Oswald, I think, is her name in the thing, and then she carries on with the Doctor. And in the last episode, I think the one where she joins up with Maisie Williams, which I kind of got the details on that wrong in our Slack channel conversation. The last episode where Capaldi's trying to reset her fate. And it's debatable whether she's the TARDIS, because she's wearing an apron, a blue and white apron, looking very much like TARDIS motif. But at the end of the episode, she walks through a door at the end of the restaurant, and it's just Capaldi and her talking in a restaurant, as well as flashbacks and stuff. But she ends up walking off, getting into the TARDIS with Maisie Williams, and they go off and apparently have adventures. We never knew what happened with that one, right? But
yep,
there you go. So yeah, and that is about that. Let's just leave it there. Anyway, so I had a whole picture of from, if you go to forget where I found this, but she was in 38 episodes of Doctor Who from 2012 to 2017, and there's a whole list of them here. If you go and dig into IMDb, I believe is where I got that from. Cool. All right. And then the next fact check we had was, my pick, I kept calling it the 420 movie. In reality is the 430 movie, which is based on when the time of day when the movie plays, of the new Kevin Smith, or the latest Kevin Smith movie. And can you blame me for thinking that Kevin Smith's movie would be called 420? Seriously?
Well, except that Kevin famously announced he no longer partakes.
Oh, does he? Oh, but he's still got the sales and...
He does. He's. This is not a judgment. He just said he'd like to try something different. So he announced last year that he's going to take a break from that stuff. So
really,
yeah,
yeah, I'd not heard that.
Which a big departure for him.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny, like who does and who doesn't these days, and how freely people talk about it these days. Because now that it's legal in most states and all of Canada, right? I believe, right?
It's a strange thing because my wife made the question before the holidays. We were talking about, just sort of traditional, gifts. And I had said, it's funny how things have changed at workplaces. I remember a time.
It's not on your Christmas list?
Yeah, it's definitely been sign of the times changing. That used to be that people would give each other bottles of booze or liquor gift cards or whatever as an office holiday, for like a white elephant kind of thing. And now that's not as much of a thing. Maybe a bottle of wine, maybe, but like it's just not as socially acceptable. And I said, I wonder what would happen, or I think she said, what would happen if you put in a bag full of gummies or a bag full of pre-rolls. It's perfectly legal. It's the same thing, but I wonder if there's still that stigma where they'd be like, "Oh my God, it's cannabis!" Like,
Yeah. I thought she was going to ask about putting bud in the Christmas dressing that we have every year. Actually, it's not. Well, is it dressing? Yeah, it's dressing. It's not stuffing. It's dressing, right?
It's right. Dressing when it's not in the turkey, right? I don't know, Jaime. You're in an office-y, more sort of a corporate environment than the two of us. What do you think that? How do you think that would fly?
Although I do work remotely, so I work from home, I cannot imagine that in office, even though I believe in the headquarters state of Missouri, I believe they've been fairly liberal about this in terms of at least medical. I don't know if there's recreational or not. But I would definitely say do not give that as the Secret Santa or
yeah.
Is there like a hidden Hanukkah? It's also coincided with Christmas this year, so.
Yeah, I can tell you when I worked at the startup, we would go out for beers after work kind of thing, especially if we were in Chicago or in Toronto. And I do know that there were people who would partake and, they would go to the local dispensary and get some stuff, right? But I think generally the policies are not to come to work high, right?
Well, as they would be for not coming to work drunk, I would hope.
Yeah, that's true. And I do know that when I worked in financial services, and that may be true for Jaime too, but like when I worked for the banks in Toronto, it is absolutely no. Like, no, you can't be, can't even be can't bring it into the office, and you cannot partake while you're at work, right? So that was a policy.
Yeah, which again, I mean, in theory, that would be the same policy as, you can't be impaired when you're impaired on any substance. So sure.
Anyway. That said, it's a good movie, and there's no drugs in it. So,
but we digress.
I mean, it's from the 70s, and there's no drugs in the movie. You have to suspend disbelief when you go to movies and stuff like that. But I'm telling you, yeah, I found that unusual. All right, so we'll move on to the headlines. Jaime, you got a couple? No, this is Jonathan's up first.
That's me. I'm Jonathan. Yes. So let's start with the new DC Expanded Universe. So we got news last week that Jason Momoa is going to be the sole survivor of the Purge now that there's a new regime in the the DC cinematic universe, but he's not going to be Aquaman. He's coming back to the DCU as Lobo, a very popular cult favorite character that has been around since the early 80s. And it's something that he had lobbied for, a long time ago. He thought that would be a fun character to play. He's sort of legendarily this sort of space biker character who's really, irreverent and just, think total opposite of the sort of Boy Scout Superman character. He's kind of this just grubby, filthy, nasty character. So he should be a lot of fun. And Momoa's got a lot of charisma, so I think he'll be really good at that. But it's interesting that, in the Great Purge that has seen basically all that has come before be undone, that he's the one person that kind of gets to stick around and play in the sandbox, but as something else.
Yeah, I think that that would make sense to me as casting. And now I'm looking years ahead and thinking they absolutely need to do the Deadpool and Wolverine equivalent, Deathstroke and Lobo, where he does come back as Aquaman in a multiverse of madness kind of way.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, again, it seems like a good casting, and Momoa is still a very popular star, so yeah, it makes sense to me. And who knows if Aquaman has any future in this new regime? So we'll worry about that when it comes. Next up, we got our first full trailer for Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, and this is a new series that's coming to Disney Plus. It kind of, to me, reminded me a little bit of the Miles Morales animated universe. It's a little more cartoony, a little less CG, but kind of has that similar kind of energy to it. It's focused. It was originally going to be set pre Spider-Man Homecoming, and it was going to be sort of this sort of prequel series around that. It still seems like it's kind of on that track. And it sort of focuses on Peter Parker when he first gets his powers and first gets his, when he's wearing sort of the hoodied suit and is sort of trying to sort of find himself before we see the events of Civil War and Spider-Man Homecoming. Did you guys have a chance to watch this trailer? What'd you think?
I did. Is this sort of in this? It said, I saw for a split second there, X-Men 97. Is it in that same style or?
No, it's not really. It's much more, like I say, it looks a little bit more like the Miles Morales, the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse type movies, as far as the sort of the way that it moves, but it's not as CGI. Like, it's a lot more sort of traditional cell animation style. But yeah, I like the look of it myself.
Yeah, it definitely would be something I would watch. I mean, of course, I've seen the Amazing Spider-Man, the show that was on, the first animated one that was on in the Canadian production, right? So,
the one in the 60s. Yeah.
So I would watch this for sure. It looked really entertaining,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the suit, the black and or the white and black suit was pretty interesting as a design.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know if either of you have played the Spider-Man video games. There's a version of that suit in there from when he was part of the Fantastic Four as part of that storyline from maybe 10 or 12 years ago in the comic books. That's kind of how he looks then in that black and white outfit. So they seem to infer in the trailer that may have come from working for Oscorp. So I don't know. Very interesting.
Yeah, I did see Oscorp on the side of the building at one point, right? So yeah, interesting. Yeah, it looks good. I mean, looks fun, and it's Disney Plus, so it's easy to watch.
It's easy to watch, and again, it looks very much. It kind of has that same kind of awkward charm that we got from the Spider-Man, the most recent iteration of Spider-Man. Like, he's kind of got that like quirky, awkward around people, but confident as Spider-Man kind of vibes. And yeah, it looks good. Sad news this week. We saw the passing of a bit character in Star Wars who actually got a second bit in thanks to Rogue One. But Angus McGuinness, who was the actor who played the Gold Leader in the original Star Wars movie, and then they used some more footage from him that they had lying about and put him into Rogue One, a Star Wars story as well. So he's, again, he's a face if you've watched Star Wars enough times. He's a voice you certainly know, and yeah, it's kind of kind of, again, obviously we're losing a lot of people from this generation. But he passed away just before Christmas, and he was the ripe old age of 77.
Now, we lost Red Leader already, right? The Stay on Target guy? Stay on Target.
Yes, I think we did, yes. Yep. And I definitely want to flag this one. I saw that this is on our Slack channel as well now, but flagged this a couple of days ago that we're going to get a free preview weekend. So depending on when you're listening to this, the folks at Apple TV Plus are giving you a 3-day free preview of all their goodies. So if you are wanting to dip your toes into the Silo or the Slow Horses or Severance or... Help me out, Tim. You know all these shows.
For All Mankind.
Ted Lasso. Ted Lasso's a great one.
I think Severance is getting all the buzz these days because of it's coming out soon, right? So
yeah. I mean, what's your favorite?
Ooh, that's a good question. Severance is pretty good. I like Mythic Quest as being something kind of different.
Well, Silo, we talked. Bad Sisters is good. Slow Horses. The morning show is pretty good if you like that kind of thing. Bad Monkey's really good. I watched before; it was okay. Foundation. We had the first season of Foundation, right?
Right.
Dark Matter. We talked about that on the show. Lessons.
I really like Dark Matter.
Lessons in Chemistry is good. We talked about C when we first started the show, about this podcast, but I didn't finish that.
Yeah. And a lot of movies, including some stuff that's up for Oscars, like Blitz is probably going to get nominated for some Oscars. That's on there.
Yeah, Invasion, there was 2 seasons of Invasion, which is sort of a War of the Worlds kind of thing. And then Monarch, the Legend of the Monsters, that was a pretty good one, too.
And if you got 4 hours you're not doing anything with, you can watch Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, and then Fly Me to the Moon.
Or Napoleon.
Fly Me to the Moon is a good movie that just came out. Let's see Greyhound was a Tom Hanks one from way back. The Instigators was good. Argo was okay.
So for our beloved listeners, you have 3 days to watch all that. Enjoy.
Yeah, don't sleep. Napoleon's on there. Yeah. So what do they have to do? They have to sign up and then do the Jaime Lopez quit thing before it kicks in.
It does, yes. If you don't already subscribe, you can log in and basically sign up, and then you basically have to just say decline at the end. But I think this is good. I used to love when I was a kid back in the 80s, and they used to do the free, Mega Movie Channel previews and stuff like that, where you could just binge all the good content at once. I really dug that, and I wish more of these sort of premium things would give you just a crack, because I really do think that, not everybody's going to be able to power through, 14 hours of television for an entire series. But if you can get a few people interested in what you've got cooking, I think it's a really good strategy.
Yeah, it's definitely. Well, I mean, Apple is known as having the lowest number of subscribers currently, right? So even though they have the best shows, arguably, right? That's what I hear from other reviewers talking about this plan, right?
You mean it's not Tubi?
What do you mean not Tubi?
Having the best content?
Oh, I don't know about Tubi, but no, this is, I'm basing a couple of shows that I listen to on a regular basis. They do reviews of the current movies and stuff like that. And they, I should put that other movie that I saw the other day on there too. Speaking of the watch list, which is coming up. Yeah. No, I think Apple, my first go-to is I open the TV app, and then luckily the TV app interfaces with Disney Plus and Paramount and the other one. It doesn't interface with Crave, and I don't think it on my device it doesn't integrate with what's that one with the N, Netflix, right? So if I'm watching a show on another channel, it'll show up in the menu of, hey, here's the next episode in the Apple TV app. So it kind of just, it becomes the first sort of point you go to when you turn on your Apple TV kind of thing, right?
Mm.
Are you there?
Hello,
I'm talking to you. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Grunt or something,
Ugh.
Ugh. Okay.
We concur. Ugh.
All right. Good. Good concurring.
All right, Jaime, over to you.
Yeah. We'll point out this next article from The Verge is U.S. centric. There is some European Union caveats, and I couldn't even tell you what goes on in Canada. But as far as the U.S. is concerned, Popeye and Tintin are now in the public domain, very similar to the Steamboat Willie that happened last year, last year.
Yeah.
Winnie the Pooh, a year or two before that. But it is very specific. So, you can start using Popeye, but it's going to be the black and white Popeye for 1929. And a bunch of other copyrighted works, which, who is it? Duke's Law Center for the Study of Public Domain has rounded up all of those. If you're very curious about Ernest Hemingway's Farewell to Arms, the Skeleton Dance, which is the spooky, scary skeletons, that song that people use all the time. Now you can use it legally instead of, in a fair use or perhaps questionable sort of way. But as they note here regarding Popeye, he didn't start using spinach as a performance-enhancing drug until 1932. So it'll be a few more years before you can do any spinach-related stuff with Popeye and run afoul.
Now you just have to do distended forearms and a pug face.
Well, he's not quite as exaggerated in the black and whites here, looking at this image here, but just to point out that he is already in public domain in Canada.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, Canada's laws, especially for book characters, is shorter.
Yeah.
Popeye's not covered
Tintin
here, but Tintin in the European Union won't be until 2054.
Really?
There's differences how that works.
So, Tintin is an interesting one because it's it stages depending on what it is, right? It's the first cartoon strips that I think that are now available, but not the cartoons, like the actual animated ones. So some things that you can. So it's going to be interesting because I think there's just people like in law offices right now just waiting for somebody to slip in, as you said, Jaime, a can of spinach and be like, "You're sued," or somebody's going to slip in. Like you're allowed to use Winnie the Pooh, but you're not allowed to use Winnie the Pooh's with the shirt,
the red
right?
shirt, yeah.
Is so I'm sure there are people who are like lined up waiting for you to screw up with all these little bits of detail that came later.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Tintin.
It is interesting though that we're getting to the point now where things are starting to fall into the public domain that were so connected to brand when we were younger. You just have these ties that are going to start to get more and more frayed as we go forward. I mean, even things like you mentioned the Hemingway novel, right? Like that's one of his most famous pieces of work. Now can be published and or adapted by anyone at any time in any fashion and or modified. So, we'll probably see different interpretations on that. I'm told that there's some Popeye weird horror movies that are in the making, just like there are Winnie the Pooh ones and stuff. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the pop culture ramifications of this next wave of public domain things are.
Yeah, I don't know if people are going to do like the greatest team up of all time, Who Framed Roger Rabbit style, as you just start accumulating enough of these.
Well, there was a series I think we've talked about on the show before that was a comic book series called The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And this was done by the author Alan Moore and his collaborator artist Kevin O'Neill. They did this series, and the idea was that they brought together these public domain characters like the Invisible Man, Mina Harkness from Dracula, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They brought together, Captain Nemo. They brought together all these characters in a sort of that fashion, which was very smart way to do it. But then as he evolved the story, he sort of showed the idea that there is a league of extraordinary gentlemen, which is just a term. There are women, obviously, throughout history in different generations. But they ran afoul at one point because they wanted to include James Bond, and James Bond is in the public domain in some countries, but not in public domain in other countries. So they could tell the story in one place, but you weren't even allowed to import it to other places because then you're violating copyrights. So it can be really interesting how these things come together depending on the laws of the land.
Yes, sir, Bob. Well, that brings us to the main part of the show where we talk about something, well, usually Star Trek related, but this time we're just going to do Star Wars instead. We have 2 episodes of The Skeleton Crew, which aired last week, and we're going to talk about, and then a few other things as well. So first up, we have episodes 5 and 6. So we're going to do them one at a time, or what do you think?
Yeah, we'll just keep it brisk, I think.
Okay, so the first one is you have a lot to learn about pirates, which was an education for all of us, but then again, Jonathan called it.
I just would like to take my victory lap as we do this. No, fine. Yeah, for my elevator pitch for this one, I had the pirate code giveth and the pirate code taketh away. We saw Fern use the pirate code to her advantage early in by saying, I'm the captain, and she gets to be the captain. And then we see, of course, how it badly can backfire when we see Silva use it for nefarious purposes.
Yes, a very large man takes on a very small girl, yes.
Yeah, grim.
Yeah. My favorite thing for me was when what's his name? Wim, yeah. When he picks up the when he picks up the lightsaber and he tries to turn it on and he's holding it upside down.
Yeah,
yeah, definitely.
Didn't poke his eye out.
Goes against the tropes and the expectations that something heroic was going to happen there.
Yeah.
What'd you guys have for your pitches?
I got to admit, on these ones, I didn't have pitches just because I was mostly watching those on airplanes. So I didn't have my normal note taking capabilities. I really do like you have a lot to learn about pirates. So I'm going to double jeopardy that one. Pew, 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 pew. It's like that'd be my pitch, as it does cover a lot, right? Like the pirate code that anybody can challenge the captain, fight to the death. That happens here, and going along with the thing that I really liked about this show so far is that the kids are in real danger. Like there's a real blade held up against the little girl's throat, right? And she has to submit. But kudos on that.
I like the lake of acid too. That was really a good touch.
It definitely, when she had that the cutlass to her throat, it definitely felt like shades of Goonies, right? Because we actually do see it the part where they run into the Fratellis and they're on the pirate ship in that movie, where there seems like a genuine, hey, if the kids have lost and their lives are in jeopardy. It's interesting when they can do that and balance that out in a kids show, right? Like this show is obviously kid centric. It is, kids are the lead characters. It is interesting when they can put those kids in peril, but also you're like, well, they're not really going to slash kids' throat, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, clearly they didn't. I don't know if we've ever seen anything like that where they would, but yeah.
I mean, we saw in The Acolyte, we saw some children get murdered, and we've seen that in Revenge of the Sith for sure. So,
well, we didn't see it. We saw a menacing guy.
We saw dead bodies. Well, we saw Jackie get killed.
That's true.
In Acolyte, she got pretty spectacularly dispatched.
Right. But was she a child or was she like a young adult?
Oh, I mean, if we take it for granted that she's the same age as the actress who played her, she'd be in her early 20s. So.
Okay, yeah.
But still,
in Jedi years, yes.
Yeah. And it was an interesting episode. Again, I always like the ones where it's like the thing is hidden inside the thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they think they're going to this nefarious pirate headquarters, and it turns out that it's now been taken over by this, bougie resort area. And so it's kind of a mix of, the pirating that's happening, but also these sort of upscale,
it's been gentrified. Yeah. Which is typical.
Yeah, exactly. Which, again, if we're using Goonies as sort of our guidepost for this whole adventure, it's the same kind of idea, right? They find this mysterious thing under another thing. But it was fun. I think we mentioned in the last episode, I wasn't really blown away by episode 4, where they go back to the child soldier thing. I thought that was a bit of a downer and a bit of a step back. But I really enjoyed the 5th episode. I thought that there was a lot of fun stuff in there. And, again, the obvious elevator pitch for this one is, curse your inevitable betrayal, right? Like, we kind of all knew that at some point Jod was going to turn against them, or Jod or Silva, or whatever we're calling him, is going to turn against them, right?
Well, at least you called it anyway earlier on in the thing, but
yeah,
the question was how and how far would he go, right?
Yeah. The only Easter egg that I pulled out of that was we did see a hut having a mud bath,
yes,
which was kind of funny. Yep. Although we didn't really establish which hut, so that's kind of fun. And there were some fun quotes. Fern with "What's a concubine?"
Yeah. Never mind.
And I thought even, when Jode is talking to Wim and he says, your focus determines your reality. You have vision, embrace it, make your life the one you want to live. That was a very profound thing. And when all the kids volunteer to search the new resort. I'll search the buffet. I'll search the buffet. No one is searching the buffet. Sounds like something I would have said as a parent to young children.
Right.
No one is searching the buffet. My big question for this one is, at one point when they are when they're inside the treasure room of Tak Renad. Now, specifically, we have never seen Tak Renad, right? We don't know what Tak Renad looks like, this infamous pirate king, this person who crash landed on Adatin, and, we don't know what became of him, right? But inside that room, there is a statue of an elephant creature in gold. And that kind of made my eyebrows raise of, is this someone related to Neil? I don't know. Maybe just a coincidence, but I thought it was really interesting that if you go back and you watch that scene where they're in the treasure room, there's a very tall statue on the one side that's of an elephant-faced creature with its arms folded looking tough, and it distinctly looks like a golden statue of an elephant person. And I was like, huh.
Yeah.
I wonder if we're going to get, and maybe that's not the twist, but I wonder if we're going to get a twist as to who or what Tak Renad is or was.
Move on to the next one.
Should we bump on to 6? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I just watched that one today, actually, because I lost track of which day of the week it is this week.
I also watched it today. It's been a very busy stretch for me. So.
I actually do have an elevator pitch for this one, because it's like, remember that Lego set that you bought? You need to buy a new one.
Yeah.
Or an additional one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I had, in honor of you, Tim, there's always a bigger crab.
Yeah, I was going to say. There's always a bigger fish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking that at the same time, too, when that thing showed up.
Yeah. It's like, oh, look, little crabs. Oh, look, a bigger crab. Oh, look, the biggest crab.
Yeah. Well, it reminded me of the Twilight Zone one where the aliens come to Earth and hand them a book, and they have to try and translate what it is, and it's to serve man. It's the name of the book.
To serve man. Yeah.
It's not because you're going to be served as food.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they were following these little creatures who are, helping them follow, and it turns out that they're food for the big crab, or for all the crabs, I guess. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were some odd sort of things today. It was interesting that the ship had a second skin, right? They were able to.
Well, it's funny because they had mentioned that in previous episodes, and even mentioned it in the beginning of this one again, when Silvo's singing the song with them, and they said, the ship was covered in armor, right, and ready for this mission. And of course, when it emerges at the end of the episode as the sort of sleeker, leaner looking version of the Onyx Cinder. That makes perfect sense. You just, sometimes you have to read between the lines, right?
Right, yeah. It was a good episode. Well, again, they kind of split up, and the whole women having to rescue KB by rebuilding her fuse in the sand, which is a little, and of course he didn't burn his hand with the molten metal, which
No,
of course not.
It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting how they divided the two, sort of the boy pairs and the girl pair, and set them up, and both Fern has to learn to compromise with Neil, and that helps her in turn realize that she hasn't been compromising with KB. So again, really kind of thoughtfully told that part, and Wim has to realize that KB is her own person and not just Fern's number one to execute her orders. So it was a good way to this is the kind of story that I value, and the story that we don't get enough of when we talk about these short seasons. We talked about this with Dune Prophecy. We will talk about it in a few minutes about Dune Prophecy, but these are the kinds of shows that make you care about these kids. And that's what this show needs. It needs you to see them as real people who aren't just, Wim can be kind of whiny, KB can be kind of aloof, they all have their sort of preset modes that we get in the first few episodes, but now we're starting to get to know them on a different level, and that's what makes it more satisfying. And to put that at episode 6, so that you now, when you go into a big, what's probably going to be the big sort of 2-part, 7 and 8, it all comes together kind of part, you actually have stakes because you care more about these kids. Pew 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 for this one. I thought that a scene while they were trying to escape, and you're like, oh, this is going to be the thing that gets them free. Oh, this is going to be the thing that gets them free. And then you realize, like, oh, I don't think they're getting free. Yeah. And then they have that big reveal. I thought that was really well done. I thought that was really,
with the big munchy, the metal forge, moving forge thing.
Well, it kind of had a trash compactory kind of moment, right? Where you're like,
to melt all the metals away, right?
Yeah, and they just kept giving you these like bits of hope. You're like, oh, well, KB's going to fix the engines and they're going to get away. No. Yeah. Oh, well, Neil and Fern are going to do something in the cockpit. Oh, that's going to work. No, that's not going to work. Okay, Wim's going to shoot his way out of it. Nope, that's not going to work. And you sort of go through all the things you think are going to be the solutions, and in the end, it turns out to be something completely different.
Yeah, right? It kind of reminded me of a boss level, in that sense. In that, because I mean, he's just randomly shooting at the thing, and I'm thinking, like, you got to find something to shoot at, a sensor or something that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But the interesting thing was like, and she sat there waiting to push that button to disengage the armor for way too long.
Yeah.
I'm like,
well, because they were warned, right? Because 33 had said to them that this was going to be something, never ever touch the emergency hull detonation sequencer.
Yeah.
But no, I thought that was good. Anybody? Do you guys have anything else for your pew pews?
No, that and the exciting sort of flying along, and not killing themselves while they were trying to rescue the younger kids.
That's true. When they reclaimed the ship, that was pretty good too. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a whole sort of back and forth with Jod and the pirates, negotiating his freedom and.
Yeah. I do like how they used the walk the hull, walk the airlock as like walk the plank. I thought that was like same kind of vibe. I thought that was really clever with the way they sort of adapted that old bit of pirate lore. Walk the plank sort of became walk the airlock. Yeah, that was good. For Easter eggs, I thought the water slide part at the beginning when they're sliding down out of the acid tunnel and out into the snow, that very much reminded me of the water slide scene from Goonies again. That was definitely felt like an homage to that. And I did not notice this, but I did see that on IO9 they had an article about where they had interviewed the people who had done the creature for the little crab, the intermediate crab, the biological crab, and they were talking about how it's sort of a mix of biological and mechanical, and in order to make it look just as weird as possible, they included all kinds of random parts. And parts, apparently, if you zoom in, you can see it. But this guy confirmed that there are parts of the Millennium Falcon in there. There are parts of AT-ATs in there. There are parts of, like, recognizable Star Wars ephemera in there.
Well, it was the C3P or C3, whatever that type of droid is.
Yeah, 3PO unit,
there was a 3PO leg is what was the... Like, they were like hermit crabs. They were wearing...
Exactly.
One of them was wearing a C3 PO leg or whatever.
Yeah. So interesting. It's a good piece. I'll put it in our show notes. But apparently it was a mix of practical and CGI effects to accomplish that. But it was an interesting creature to sort of have pop up.
Cool.
Anything else catch your eyes?
No, it's just a good episode all around, I think, right? Lots of Star Wars stuff, excitement. But I mean, I haven't got the Goonies in my head. I think I've only watched it maybe once or twice. I've seen that movie
so many times. It's just glue in there for me. My favorite quote of the whole thing was Neil with, "We're getting good at falling."
Yeah.
I also like Wim's claims he's on the new ship.
Really?
Yeah, he says that when right at the very end of the episode when they take off, he's like, claims he's on the new ship.
Oh, okay, right.
It's like, it's not the same ship anymore. I'm like, yeah, it kind of is. My big question for this one was, does it seem weird to anyone else to have a dump at the bottom of a resort?
Not necessarily.
I mean, I realize it's a long way down, but it still feels like weird that because it's so pristine up where they are. Maybe the idea is that they're so wealthy they don't look down, but I just thought that's kind of weird that there's like these like trash monsters and all this stuff.
I kind of thought they were like Michigan, like all of our trash gets sent down to Michigan, right? To be It's true, right?
It is true.
But,
it seems just a little bit derisive of Michigan.
Well, I don't
sure.
mean to diss Michigan in any sense, or because I don't know where in Michigan our trash goes to, but it goes somewhere and it gets sorted and broken down and whatever. I mean, they're obviously paying us something, or we're paying something to them for it, right? So. As opposed to throwing it in the lake, which is where it used to go, to be honest with you, right? So we have an entire island. If you ever fly into Billy Bishop Airport, you're landing on our ancestors' trash, right? So,
yep. And also the remains of subway system being excavated for the city.
Well, there's also, if you come down to Toronto, there's a resort called Toronto Island, which is, lovely place to go for the afternoon, but you're walking around on old garbage and subway tunnels, right? So,
yep.
Anyway, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think this has turned well. Like I say, I felt like episode 4 was a bit of a down one for me. I was enjoying it, but I wasn't in love with it. But I'm really enjoyed the last 2 episodes. I think this is a fun adventure that I'm really curious to see if they can stick the landing in the last 2 episodes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cool. All right, let's move on to let's get Dune prophecy out of the way. Finally, once and for all. I don't even remember what happened in episode 5, but episode 6 they kind of did the whole Jaime Lopez hold my beer moment, right?
Right. Oh, did they ever?
Yeah. So we can just glom these two together. I can't remember what happened in episode 5.
Episode 5 was a lot of setup, as were episodes 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this is the one where we had Sister Francesca showed up.
Oh yeah, they find out about the. Is that the one where they find out what sister the mother, whatever Mother Superior did back in the day to separate the crew, and the one girl comes back to life as the older.
Yes,
that was episode 5.
And that was the one that ended with the revelation that Desmond is actually Tula's son, part Atreides, part Harkonnen. Yeah. And then, this series. And then, episode 6 was definitely a patented Jaime Lopez, hold my beer. Mm-hmm. Let's try and wrap up a bunch of stuff. Let's kill off a bunch of characters that no one cares about whatsoever because they hadn't done anything to make you care about them at all. The stakes are high. They have to go here and they have to like it. Oof, boy, this series sucked. It was not good. I feel like somewhere in here there's probably a good story, but they didn't find it. Jaime, what did you think? I got to know. I mean, this was not great in my opinion. I'd like to know what you think.
Yeah, as soon as another one that I watched on the plane, the final episode, as soon as I saw the runtime, I was like, there you go. You messed up your pacing if you have to shove in an extra 20 minutes into your final episode. And weirdly, they did too much and yet not enough. I don't even know how that's possible. They move really quickly on a bunch of things. Hey, guess what? Like all these ladies who were against Valia's way of things, like they're all dead and they're at the bottom of this lake, not a reflecting pool.
Hopefully not well, because
yeah, because it's a little broth down there, I guess. And I don't know, getting pieces off the board really quickly. So getting rid of Francesca, getting rid of Carino,
the Emperor.
I don't fully understand the very end where Valia's like, hey, I'm gonna slow these guys down for you. Go run ahead, get out of here. And then she's with them at the end. Like, I don't know. She just, after she spent a long dramatic time with her sister, getting through the computer virus vision and trying to fight through it, and learning that Desmond Hart is Tula's son. Very, very strange pacing there.
That there's this weird technology thing inside of Desmond's eye.
Right. Yeah. Well, you kind of called that he has to have some sort of machine in him or whatever.
There had to be something in there. There was no way that wasn't somewhere connected in there. I did not know that it was going to be like the thing that triggers this virus or whatever. But there had to be something artificial going on there because they made such a big deal about the AI stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And the part I think this episode that was the most confounding was they had Sister Theodosia, who's the one who can shapeshift, and the plot was like, well, we'll leave her behind so that she can then try feebly to assassinate Desmond.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't, like, if you're going to go to all that effort, why not have her take a sure shot? Like, why not have her be like, oh, be Inez for a couple of days, wait till he's not looking and slice his throat? Like, why have her just be lying there prone and like do a feeble attempt at trying to kill him? Like, that was just so, just so ham-fisted. It was just so bad.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, because he's as a character, he's not to be messed with. Even, I mean, doesn't he arrest his mother at the very end of it too, right? Or is
Yeah,
and
Tula gets arrested.
Again, the whole, so we see, I don't know if it's in the fifth episode or whatever. In fact, I don't care, but just to get it out off my chest. We see this whole scene where she gives up the baby, right? As the younger actress gives up the baby, and and they give her the stillborn one, and they take the good baby off to the mother who had the stillborn one, and then he says, "My mother was one of these nuns, and she gave me up." How does he know that? How does he not know that he was just raised by a loving mother and father? You know?
Yeah.
So, and again, unless the worm told him when installed the machine behind his retina or whatever, you know, the cyber retina.
So compounding all this is that it basically ends with we see Valia and Kieran and Inez landing on Arrakis, which is supposed to, I guess, be the big tease for like, well, you remember that planet from the Dune movies? We're gonna go there next time.
Yeah,
and they've announced the second season, so. I mean, I guess there's nowhere to go but up, but I can't say that I'm thrilled.
Well, you know, going back to Tatooine worked out for Phantom Menace, right?
Yes. Please, more of that. Anyways, I'm going to call this one a D-. It was not a total F, but it was a D-, and hopefully they can sort out all this stuff and make it make sense if they do more of it, because I love the Duneverse. I think that Herbert was a genius and there was some really interesting concepts to explore, but this is not it.
All right, well, let's talk about the Doctor Who Christmas special. I don't remember if I watched it on Christmas Day. I think I did. I watched it the day after, which is nice about Disney. And the new Doctor Who on Disney, right? What was it called? Was it Empire Death? No. It's part of season. No. It's part of season 2. Joy to the World.
Yes.
So it's
Joy to the World.
Episode 0 of season 2. That's not going to be confusing in about 2 years' time.
Not at all. Not at all. Yeah. So again, some interesting concepts here. I thought. Yeah. I thought that, you know, the idea that the Doctor in the wake of Ruby moving on. And the Doctor being alone. And we've seen it in the past. So I think for well-traveled Whovians, it kind of feels like a little bit of a repeat of the Doctor doesn't do well on his own. It's not good for him. That's what this episode felt like it was about, was just the Doctor needs a companion. The Doctor needs to find joy in sharing with others.
Yeah, they did split it up with Ruby having her own adventure earlier on in the season, right? So they do kind of like, I think the idea that the original idea was the Doctor always has a companion with him, you know, through the first series of Who's all the way through the 60s and whatever and 70s, but they don't always, because and usually around the Christmas specials, they usually split off, and it's, you know, the 5 Doctors or the 2 Doctors or the 1 Doctor or the Dalek comes back. And in this case here, like, because I think when Whittaker's Christmas special, one of the specials they did wasn't Christmas, I think it was New Year's Day. She goes into this store and kind of has this, you know, mission, not with her regular companions, right? So, yeah. So, which is interesting because she was in a movie with. Who's the guy who played Finn in Force Awakens and all that?
Oh, John Boyega.
John Boyega. She's in a movie with John Boyega called Rock the Block or something like that.
Attack the Block.
Attack the Block, which is a great movie.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, it's a great movie. But again, it's sort of like, it's just like she could almost be Doctor Who kind of because she's by herself, running around and solving problems, right? So, and hooking up with these young guys and figuring out how to defeat these aliens, right? So, and maybe that was a precursor to why they thought about her as a future Doctor. But but anyway, in this one here, I liked it because, again, I always love the timey-wimey ones, right? It's my pitch would be when one door opens, another door opens.
Yeah.
And the whole sort of, because they're in this time hotel, and which is kind of an interesting idea. It's kind of like a hub for all time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this character, which he meets up, called Joy.
Yeah, and I thought she was fun. As a, in addition to the it's obviously that it is a fine tradition also in these things to have popular actors of the ilk in there. So to have Nicola Coughlan, who's obviously sort of on the hot list for being on Bridgerton, to be in there, I thought that was a good fit. But I did think it was unusual that they went through the whole story, and the moral of the story was that he needs to go find himself a new companion, but they didn't introduce the companion. So it was basically like, well, if you want to see the Doctor get a new companion, come back for season 2, right?
Oh, is Ruby leaving the show?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
They announced that a while back that she was
the actress,
she was going to not be she was basically a one and done character. They wanted her to be sort of the central arc of the first season, and then that was going to be it. So I think she's coming back for maybe the first or a bit of the season, but they've already announced. If you go to the BBC Doctor Who page or even Disney Plus's social media this week, they were promoting the fact that Verada Situ is going to be the new companion. She was in the first season of Andor. She was Cinta, the
sister or whatever.
She was the Indian girl. So. Yeah, and I thought she was good in that, so it'll be interesting to see what she brings to that. But yeah, she's all it says is season 2 coming soon, but hopefully we won't have to wait too long for more Chidi Gatwa and her in the next season.
Yeah, it's sort of an interesting thing where he has to sort of wait a year to solve this problem, right? And so he ends up, working for almost like the Magician's Apprentice, because at one point he's even got the mops magically mopping the stairs, right? With the other character, Anita Ben. It's kind of like, when you go work in a place and you're, I don't know if you've ever worked in a restaurant or you worked in a store. So you always had the cashier or whatever who you would be friends with on a sort of, like collegial basis, like you work together kind of thing, right? Co-worker
yeah, but your job was different.
Yeah. And they kind of have this relationship back and forth, and then he kind of, then the year's up and he kind of has to move on, right? So, because he's going to go through the door and solve the problem that we've been waiting a year to find out about, right? That's another interesting thing they kind of can do in Doctor Who, right?
Timey-wimey.
Yeah.
Jaime, did you, you're our newest Whovian, did this all work for you?
I did not get a chance to see this, so I enjoyed the recap. No problem there.
Good thing we didn't spoil it for him.
No.
Yeah, really.
It's fine.
We haven't spoiled it yet.
No, it's fine. It's kind of interesting how the Disney money is influencing some of these things. Like y'all mentioned, it's not going to be confusing at all to have this renumbering. But I guess when you're paying the bills, and I haven't seen this episode, but if it's like the other season, I assume it's a little bit higher rent, in terms of the stuff that they can do. But it sounded like it still had the same flavor of what I saw in the new Doctor.
Yeah, it definitely was. Although it's interesting because I think the hallmark of the first season of Chudi Gatwa is that he was mostly up. Like he was a lot more up than down. I think some of the Doctors have been a little more serious and heavy. I think they tried to keep it deliberately a little lighter with him. This one, there was definitely, again, they were deliberately exploring the ideas of loneliness and the fact that this is a Christmas episode and a lot of people do feel lonely around the holidays, I think was very astute way to sort of explore that story with the Doctor's sort of isolation and stuff. But yeah, I think there's definitely a slower pace to this one. I think maybe a little more than some of the previous holiday specials that felt like, they were a little bouncier than this one. This one felt very kind of quieter, staid.
Well, it's interesting too because on the Disney Channel, I'm reading from IMDb when I said it's a series, season 2, episode 0, but on the Disney app, it's called Holidays. It's called Doctor Who Special number 5, I believe, right?
Yeah, because they're keeping them separate from the seasons.
Yeah, because
it's just going to be even more confusing for the non-Who followers.
Yeah, because they had the introduction. They had the David Tennant run, and then 3 episodes with him, and then they introduced Ncuti Gatwa as the 4th episode, right before the season itself.
Yeah,
and it is interesting, like you said, Jaime, that they're kind of treating this with the Disney money. For some reason, even IMDb's listing it as a new show, right? Like in that it's listed differently than the series that went from Eccleston to Jodie Whittaker, right? That was a different show according to how Disney's treating it, and it's weird because it's still, for all of us who've been watching this for 50 years or 60 years now, I guess it is, Doctor Who is Doctor Who, right? So
yeah,
very strange.
I have not explored it, but I am a little curious. So, just a mild spoiler, Jaime, not dramatic one, but at the end of the episode, there is an inference that, as a result of this story, that Doctor Who / the events of this episode created the Star of Bethlehem.
Right.
Might be just a smidge sacrilegious for the people who believe in birth of Jesus and Jesus' divinity, but I thought that was an interesting one. I'm like, well, let's brave of Disney to go down this road. Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, I might have found that interesting as a conceit like years ago, but I'm not so much sure of that anymore. Right? The whole Star Bethlehem thing.
Yeah, obviously it's not easy to it's not easy to tell a story about something like Christmas without wading into some possibly.
But there was another show, and I can't remember if it was Doctor Who, but there was another show. Oh, what was it? Maybe it was All Good Things, where there's a big giant anomaly that kind of shrinks over time and ends up being the Star of Bethlehem. Do you ever remember that? The sci-fi series. And they keep coming across it in different points in time, and they think it's getting bigger, but it's actually getting smaller, right?
Sounds like the final episode of TNG.
Was it? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, was that one? Yeah. That's what I'm thinking of, because didn't that bring that whole episode 1 back into where the big space anomaly underneath the planet or wherever, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty well-worn trope, right?
Yeah, Farpoint. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it was the last TNG. Yeah. That Star of Bethlehem, and there's lots of sci-fi approaches to how that star was formed and why it appears when it does and stuff, right?
Well, like I say, not everybody digs it when you try and scientifically explain these things.
Yeah, it's funny. I heard the other day somebody was talking about a deity or something like that was not part of Catholicism, where the main person was born on the 25th of December, and all these other things that were appropriated by earlier Christians as the dates that that are significant to them, which were lifted from another. Not like the Romans and the Greeks didn't do that either, right? So, Romans,
but even in the 20th century, I read a fascinating piece over the holidays about how Coca-Cola modernized and created Santa Claus as we know it, and how that changed Christian holidays too, because up until I guess the 19 teens and 20s, Easter was a far more important Christian holiday than Christmas was. It was spun around because Coke wanted to find a way to sell more Coke in wintertime.
But if you're Catholic and you believe that whole original sin thing, that's exactly why Jesus was killed on the cross, was to make it good, make it okay for the rest of us to carry around this original sin thing, right? But I mean, and I'm paraphrasing all of the Roman Catholic stuff I learned in school and earlier on in life.
Yeah, it's definitely there's a lot to it, and yeah, you can certainly tell a lot of interesting stories and that stuff. It's just Disney doesn't necessarily like to wade into those waters all the time, so it's interesting.
Yeah, it's surprising. Yeah, well, I mean that was why the episode is called "Joy to the World," which is the line from the song, right? The name of the song, right?
Well, and just honestly, if you think about some of the other Doctor Who specials, there's a lot more Santa than there is Jesus, and that's probably because it's safer.
Yeah, that's what it is. So I have this meeting I do every second Tuesday with a bunch of other people on Vision Pro. I've talked about it on the show before, but we were talking about Christmas last time around, and my friend who's Chilean but he lives in Berlin was talking about how in Spanish it's Père Noel or Father Christmas, and I think in Germany you call it the Christ Kid, right, or Christ Child.
Christkind, yeah,
and then
Christ Child,
yeah, and then there's but then there's a Father Christmas or Father Noel, right, or Father Christmas. Santa Claus,
there's
like you said,
Kris Kringle,
yeah, but Santa Claus came, as you said, as part of the Coca-Cola campaign, right, to sort of sell more bottles of Coke, right? Because he was a character drinking the Coke, right, in the ads, right? So.
Yeah, basically he was conceived in a marketing meeting for Coca-Cola because they were like, oh, our sales in summer are great, our sales in spring and fall are good, our sales in winter are non-existent. We need to find a reason for people to drink Coke in winter. So they basically merged all of this mythology into one character and marketed the heck out of it, and it literally changed how we celebrate, whether it's in a secular or non-secular way.
Yeah, we can also have some polar bears drinking Coke as well.
That's it.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it was one of the better Doctor Who Christmas special-y things. They generally tend to be pretty good. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I still continue to enjoy Chudikawa. I think he's a great Doctor.
Yes, for sure.
I'm looking forward to more of him.
Now a word from our sponsor. Now back to the show.
Cool. All right. So you want to talk about What If or Creature Commandos?
Well, I guess I'll ask the question first. So, Tim, I know you said you've only watched.
Well, I made the mistake.
Part.
I started watching and then I realized I was actually watching the first one of season 2. So then I watched the first one of season 3. Yeah. Which is the big, I don't know what you call those, Kaiju
and Mech, yes.
Yeah, Kaiju and Mech episode.
The Mech Avengers.
Yeah. Although I did enjoy the one. I did enjoy the one with what's the Karen Gillian character? Nebula joins the cops or whatever. Yeah, that.
Yeah.
Is the first season 2, and Howard the Duck was in that one too.
Jaime, did you watch What If?
No, I didn't get a chance to see these.
All right, well, let's put that one on hold. We can circle back to it. I finished it up just this afternoon, and I don't want to get ahead of it or spoil it. You were
saying the last time we talked about this that they were releasing them because they're all out now, right? But they were releasing them one
starting
day.
On like the 22nd or something. Okay. So yeah.
Yeah, as if people didn't have anything else to do during the last 5 days.
Well, exactly. And I watched them in, I think, 3 bunch. I watched like 3, 2, and 3, so that got it over with. But yeah, there's certainly lots to look forward to. There's lots of little fun things. They did kind of focus a lot on like some of the newer characters. It's not like Captain America and Thor and that. They definitely circled back to some of the less touched upon characters, which is. Your mileage may vary. If you like those characters, it'll be good. But you do see more like Shang-Chi, Kate Bishop, Red Guardian, Agatha, other characters in there, which is I thought it was fun. I have seen a few people say they didn't love it because of that exact reason. And like I say, your mileage may vary.
Why? Because they mess with the plots and stuff, or.
No, not at all. Just that they don't have that same affection for those characters as they do some of the ones who have been around for 15 years, right? So, yeah. But yes, let's circle back on that one in a couple of weeks when you guys have had a chance to catch up.
Okay.
Creature Commandos. Jaime, are you up on Creature Commandos?
No, I've also not seen this one.
All right, so we'll put that on the back burner as well. I'll just summarize it by saying it's very over the top. Episode 4 was fantastic. Episode 5 was okay, but it is an interesting look inside of where maybe this DCU is going. So I would say it's worth a watch just to sort of get a temperature taking of where James Gunn might be going with some of this stuff. So worth it in that sense for sure.
Yeah, cool.
Oh, and Jaime, just to wet things more for your What If watching things, there is a character from X-Men 97 in there somewhere.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah.
You just have to find him. All right, let's move on to the watch list. And Jaime, you're up first with a couple of things.
Yeah, a couple of things that I saw in theaters with the family. First one, believe it or not, they wanted to see Sonic the Hedgehog 3. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to try to convince you to watch the third one if you didn't like the first two. You kind of know what you're getting in for. And spoilers, there's more because we did talk about this on the show, but you want to stay for the post-credit scenes if you're going to watch this one. So Keanu Reeves does a pretty good job as Shadow. They handle what I recall the origin of Shadow in the video games pretty accurately as a translation. So thought that was pretty nice. He's got a sort of what's the trope here? I'm trying to think of the trope. It's like a wounded warrior kind of a trope,
like a Bucky the Winter Soldier.
Yeah, very similar.
Yeah. I did watch Sonic the Hedgehog 1 during the break, so I'm going to have to get into Hedgehog 2 and then catch up on the third at some point.
I don't know how they're going to handle the budgets because, look, they're carrying Idris Elba's salary along since.
Oh, there's a special too. There's like second, Knuckles, right?
Right, and then now they're going to start having to carry Keanu Reeves, of course.
And Jim Carrey.
Jim Carrey, I guess, must be doing it for fun and not for true money, because they can't possibly afford him 3 in a row, and he does double duty in this one as his own grandfather.
Yeah, I guess after you've done The Grinch, anything's better, right?
No, it's he's done some questionable roles over the years.
But apparently he hated the Grinch costume; it was just a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Yep. And
what else did you see in the theater?
Gladiator 2, which I think is pretty good. I'm going to give it a B-. I enjoyed it. I think it's a worthy successor to the original Gladiator. Don't believe the hype either way. It is not better than Gladiator. It is not embarrassing compared to Gladiator. It's a really good, solid one. We talked about, what's the best sequel, true sequel to something that is, decades apart, and it's really difficult. I still think Top Gun Maverick is probably the longest amount of time with the greatest amount of, that's really, kick-ass kind of thing. This does not hit that lofty era, but it's certainly worthy of discussion.
I did hear there's sharks in this one.
The sharks were a bad choice, in my opinion. Now, I do know this from watching History Channel. The Colosseum could be flooded.
Yeah, sea battles.
Sea battles. Yeah, that was realistic. The sharks was you didn't need to add that. That was a little unnecessary. But good performance.
Well, just as a side note, Apple released, they have a thing called Wildlife, a series of immersive videos that they put on the Vision Pro. And the latest episode to come out was this dude down in, a diver down in Florida somewhere, who takes you on a tour, and the sharks, come around you. And he's batting them away like puppies and, feeding them fish and stuff like that. And they just, even though they're huge and scary, and we have all the history of Jaws and Meg and all that kind of stuff in our heads, they're just a bunch of fish, swimming around being, ancient, right? So it takes all of the threat out of sharks. You know what I mean? Yeah, cool.
Did they have frickin' lasers on their heads or anything?
Sharks with lasers?
Frickin' lasers on their frickin' heads.
Yeah, cool. All right, what do you got, John?
Yeah, I just everything that we talked about is stuff I watched. As I say, I watched all of What If and on all that as well. So didn't have a lot of time for extra stuff over the holidays, but I am very excited that we're going to get Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul drops on Netflix in North America on Friday, January 3rd. So excited about that. It did make its debut initially in the UK on Christmas. Mm-hmm. So they lucky buggers got it already, and the reviews were very, very positive. Said it was a very fun adventure. And I see here in our notes that one of us has already seen it.
Yeah, Tim and Carol went and saw it on New Year's Eve. We always look for something to do on New Year's Eve, and I'm a member of TIFF, and so I got an email from them weeks ago saying that it was playing. So I said to, hey, Carol, do you want to go see this? Because we're both fans of Wallace and Gromit, and in general. And I can't remember if I think we've seen most of the movies. We've seen obviously the DVDs and stuff like that, but I think we went and saw the last one in the theater, which wasn't as successful as this one, I'll say. It's interesting, from a point of view, if you're a Wallace and Gromit fan, there's a ton of stuff in there for you. If you're a fan of British TV and, specifically things like Thunderbirds and stuff like that, or Batman, the original 60s Batman, there's a lot of, and James Bond too, there's a lot of really cool stuff in this one. And the main nemesis is from, I think it's the Wrong Trousers, right? So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to give anything away, but yeah, and like as Jonathan mentioned, there is a lot of stuff on Facebook and on, Reddit and stuff like that where people are talking about this now. But yeah, it's definitely, like, I very rarely give movies 5 stars. I usually give them a 3.5, maybe 4, like a Star Wars New Hope or, Empire Strikes Back, Raider or not Raiders. Raiders of the Lost Ark would be one, and Blade Runner would be like a 5 for me, right? And I gave this a 5-star review, so I think I'm a huge fan of Wallace and Gromit. I think you still get a lot of fun out of it if you haven't seen anything by them before, but if you have, it's extremely funny, right? And really well done. Now we saw it on the big screen, right? So. Which is a great way to see it if you can. But yeah, it's going to be on Netflix, like Jonathan said, tomorrow. And so watch it on your biggest TV you can.
Yeah.
That's what I got to say. I did watch Black Doves. I just finished. That's what I was doing the last couple of days. Yesterday, I just finished off the last 4 episodes of Black Doves. So thanks for that, Jonathan. That was his call.
What did you think?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, there was a lot of like, why didn't he ever say to her, where were you? Like when I had to deal with the kids. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you would get home when you came home, and it was in the middle of the Christmas holidays. There's all these events happening with the family, and this woman who's a spy is running around, not at home, right? So
well, because I took that as 2 things. One, that he's British,
yeah,
and they don't necessarily like to have those kinds of awkward conversations. And also,
yes, definitely,
he later on he thinks that maybe she's playing around on him, right? So he doesn't want to ask a question he doesn't want the answer to.
Yeah, well, it's funny too, like when he kind of confronts her in the kitchen. This is completely nothing to do with the story, by the way. When he meets her in the kitchen and says, I really love you. I loved you since I first met you, and I think you're great and all that kind of stuff. And meanwhile, he thinks that she's been fooling around, right? And she just looks at him and says, "Well, I'll be back before 10." Like doesn't even I know, or like do a Harrison Ford on him or something, Yeah.
No, I really enjoyed that series. I'm glad you made the time for it.
I mean, there was a bit of. I mean, everybody's playing everybody else, right? In this.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, like, there was no doubt about, like, she thinks she's doing. It starts off with her. Spoiler, she is fooling around, but it starts out with her thinking she's being altruistic in this relationship, and of course, I'm not going to, don't want to spoil it too much, but yeah. And obviously, I think in season 2, there's going to be an election, and he's going to move up in the world, and I think that's going to be even more fun, right? When she's the number 2, right, in number 10.
Yeah, I think this was a really fun foundation that hopefully will lead to more.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Again, I don't know about. Yeah, he's from Broadchurch, which is the one with Jodie Whittaker and David Tennant and Olivia Colman, right? Where he and Olivia Colman are the police investigators. He plays the husband. He plays Jodie Whittaker's husband. Because I looked at him and I kept thinking, like, well, how do I know this guy? Because I don't watch a lot of British movie or TV, right? But as much as I would like to, but because it's all on some streaming service, which I don't have now.
Yeah.
But
who's going to cave and get Brightbox first?
Yeah. So he's a well-known actor. Like, I've seen him before, obviously, because he was in that TV series, right? And it's interesting that Keira Knightley is doing a TV. I guess this is a TV series, right? Like, it's typical British television, 6 episodes. Kind of thing. So it's quick. I mean, in terms of that. And the dude, I can't remember his name now, but you mentioned him last week, and I had no.
Ben Whishaw.
He's Q from James Bond, from Daniel Craig's James Bond.
Yep.
So you see, they have to get a new Q once they roll out the new. I mean, I don't. Sometimes they don't, right? When they get the new James Bond coming out when the next one comes out?
They have not announced yet.
Yeah.
Not said.
Cool. All right. Well, so one of the things we talked about on the show a lot, and we've talked about this in the past, is I always look for movies that come out at $4.99 or lower. But then again, Jonathan and I were talking about, I go to a movie and I went to see Complete Unknown, which I'll talk about in a minute. But, when I go to see a movie, I spend like anywhere between, $30 and $50 on a night out, just in terms of, food and transport and the ticket price. And yet we quibble over 4 $4.99 on iTunes, right? But I'm also looking for the movies that are in 3D so I can watch them on my Vision Pro at the $4.99 or even higher price point, right? But so I watched Mission Impossible Fallout on Vision Pro. It's currently $4.99 in Canada. It's interesting though. I bought movies in with my American account before I got my Canadian, before it was available in Canada. I had to buy movies on the American App Store, and they would be $4.99 in the US dollars, and they would be $4.99 in Canada, which is technically more money than it is in the States. But I wouldn't be surprised if this movie and the movies I'm talking about right now are $4.99 on iTunes right now in the States as well. But so Mission Impossible Fallout on Vision Pro, I thought, initially it seemed to me like a movie that had been, Xavier and I have talked about this in the past, where sometimes they film a movie in 2D and they make it 3D in post. Yep. Right? So it looked like that a lot. Like there was a lot of, like the first, half, maybe 3/4 of the movie was like, okay, why is this 3D, except for the fact that there's like chase scenes. He's on a motorcycle chasing through Paris, and he's driving towards the camera and past the camera, and whipping around. And it's Tom Cruise on a motorcycle because he's an idiot, kind of thing, right? And I mean that literally. And we've talked about that in the past. But then there's also car chase scenes and kind of stuff. And so some of those are kind of interesting in 3D. And the other problem is, for some reason, because it's done on film, the focus is not always sharp like it would be on a digital recording, right? But there's a scene at the end where Henry Cavill and Tom Cruise are chasing each other in helicopters. Again, suspend disbelief, right? But there's a scene, the climax at the end, they both end up hanging from a cable in the helicopters, vertically, and they do that whole we talked about it with that game show, or that video game that became a movie with Tom Holland.
Oh, Uncharted.
Yeah, Uncharted. The train, the trope of the train hanging off the cliff. Well, and they do that whole 3D thing. That was amazing. Like that scene looked like, okay, maybe that was done with an IMAX camera in 3D or whatever, right? But that looked really, really convincing, right? So that was worth the $4.99, because you actually were on the edge of your seat at that point, right? But I also bought Pirates: Band of Misfits, which is also by Aardman, which is the same people who make Wallace and Gromit. I hadn't seen the movie before, and it was $4.99, so I thought I passed it by for about 3 or 4 days, and then finally just went in and bought it because I got some money for Christmas, from Apple money from Christmas, and so I bought it and watched it, enjoyed it. And again, it was interesting to see that in 3D. There's one other movie. Oh, I have the Batman v Superman, I think it's Dawn of Justice League. Yep. I got that one. I just started watching that one. Again, the focus seems kind of soft, but it'll be interesting to see if there's any, tropes, like because they do things like they do throw things at the camera, in these 3D movies, which is something they did back in the 50s and 60s and 70s when you watch a 3D movie, right? With the red blue.
I just hear the SCTV scary monster horror theater.
Yeah, what was I doing the other day? I was at a family event, and whenever I can take a picture of anybody now with my iPhone 16, I tend to put it on spatial, right? Because, I figure like in 10 years, or 20 years when I'm dead and buried, somebody's going to go back through my old photos and go, oh, look, Grandpa shot this one in, or great-grandpa shot this one in 3D. Wasn't that nice of him, right? And look how soft and out of focus it looks. But anyway, so I was at a Christmas thing, and I had the camera on spatial, and I was taking a family picture, and I sort of, at the end of it, I said, hey, this is spatial. We should do like, the SCTV thing. And like, I got shot down. But oh well. But they're in 3D.
To be fair, you got Xavier and I to do it on the 25th.
Yeah, you guys did it. You guys get it, right? So
we get it.
Yeah, you get it. So there are some 3D shots in there too. And I also got Quinn and David and Nancy got to do it when we went out for dinner for Carol's birthday as well. So
right.
Yeah, so cool. The last thing I did was I'm not a huge Bob Dylan fan. Like I kind of like lots of my friends were. I know his work. I've listened to him. I admire him as a person. I know he was a huge influence on the Beatles and vice versa, and the Beach Boys and vice versa. And he did that whole going electric thing, right? Well, because he was a folkie initially, right? And it's a really interesting movie. And of course, they mess up the timeline a bit. But it is definitely, I think you're going to be hearing about it at the Oscars for sure. Because it's like Walk the Line. The actors in the movie are actually singing and playing. And Monica, I can't remember her last name, plays Joan Baez and sings like Joan Baez in the movie. And all of them learned how to play guitar to do this movie, right? So it's a really good biopic. It does cover off a lot of things that they do. I saw a thing on Watch Mojo the other day about how they compare what was fact and what was fictionalized or made up for the sake of storytelling.
They compressed a few things too.
And I watched an interview with Timothée Chalamet before I saw the movie, where he basically said the best thing to do is to not look at any reviews or any how-tos or any making-ofs before you go, and I highly recommend that you do that. If you're in any way, shape, or form going to go see this movie, again, in the theater would be a great place to see it, but definitely go unprepared and you'll really enjoy this movie. So yeah, and no time was distorted in this story other than storytelling. Anyway, that's it for me, and I guess that's it for another week. So, Jonathan, if people want to get in touch with you, where would they find you?
On a farm somewhere far, far away, starting next week.
Yes.
No, but if you really want to find me online, you can find me at JPK News. You can find me there on Instagram, or you can find me on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/@JPK. All
right. And Jaime, if people get in touch with you?
I'm on Twitter as @Dev with the Hair.
Are you not driving a burning Cybertruck into the Trump Tower?
It wasn't burning. That's a bald lie. It was exploding. The burning came later.
All right, cool. All right, well, my name is Timitra, Timmitra, on all of the things that matter, I guess. So Blue Sky, Mastodon, Instagram, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's probably the best way to find me. So until next time, we'll see you in the future.
Bye.
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 You've been listening to the Spotcast podcast. If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spotcast website at spotcast.com. If you have feedback or questions, you can get in touch with us on the website. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/spotcast. You can find details on how to help us on our website, spotcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
So I think we talked about this during our Christmas dinners and stuff like that. I did watch Yacht Rock. I thought it was really interesting. And I got what Jonathan was talking about was at the end of it, they called Donald Fagen of Steely Dan and say, "What do you think about this?" And he goes, "What do I think about what?" And then he goes, "What do you think about Yacht Rock?" And he goes, "Why don't you bleep, bleep, bleep yourself?" And hangs up, right? But I also, I don't know if I talked about it on this show, but I know I've talked about it on other shows, but there's a gentleman named Rick Beato, and if you haven't seen Rick Beato's channels on YouTube, if you're into music in any way, shape, or form, he's been doing this for about 6 or 7 years now. He's about my age. He's a music producer from Atlanta, Georgia. And he's met, he basically dissects music, right? And he had this show on YouTube called What Makes This Song Great. And he takes a song by a band and breaks it down. And somehow he gets, either he has the software to do it or he gets access to the tapes because he can play different parts of it. And he's a music teacher, so he teaches you about how the music, what chords they're playing and why they're playing that chord. And this drum fill is so cool, and he'll play the drum fills and stuff like that. I posted an early one for Jonathan because you're a huge Cure fan, where he goes through the song and kind of explains to you why you like it so much. Really, at the end of the day, right? But he's been doing some amazing interviews. He got Rick Wakeman. He's talked to Sting. He talked to Dominic Miller, who is Sting's guitarist. He's been talking to the guy who did, I've forgotten his name now, the guy from Steely Dan and Doobie Brothers, who did all those amazing solos. He's talked to Steve Gadd. He's talked to like all these amazing drummers and musicians and keyboardists, and he actually has all these things where he does like a couple of shows where he does the best top 10 solos or top 20 solos or the top 20 acoustic introductions or the top 20 piano introductions or pieces from, and he gets in, either he plays it himself or he has someone come in and do it. And he's done like amazing sort of like taking apart the stuff. But he put out a piece the other day, which I thought was really timely. This is like just came out like last week. And he basically says that yacht rock is BS. And his point is that while the yacht rock came out of this podcast that Jonathan talked about, where these two guys kind of called it yacht rock and kind of
it's a YouTube show,
glommed all this jazz oriented stuff to where Steely Dan's kind of the central group that kind of broke out, and Toto, which ended up being like an LA session group like Muscle Shoals, or there's a whole slew of musicians. I'm drawing a blank now. Carol, what's her name? The bass player. But there's usually a bunch of musicians in an area where they're session musicians. I mean, Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin was a session musician. So was Jeff Beck. So was Eric Clapton. And they kind of like, they became who they became by, Jimi Hendrix was also a session musician, right? So, I think what Rick's point is that it was coincidental that all this stuff happened, and it wasn't, yacht rock was not the purpose of it, and it's not sort of the way to kind of simplify this music by putting it into this category, which never existed, right? But that said, I mean, when grunge came out, I don't know that Nirvana or Blur 182 or whatever they're called, I don't think they called them, I don't think they called themselves grunge, or no, not them. I'm thinking of Pearl Jam, right?
Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, Screaming Trees. Yeah.
I mean, they didn't. They were Seattle sound. It wasn't like they didn't. I don't think they really had a name for. They weren't purposely trying to be grunge, or where, mind you, and I don't think the punk rockers were purposely trying to be punk initially, or the new wave people weren't. They were trying to be not punk and not disco.
No, most music is a reaction to other music, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it all evolves from the same places, right? It all if you look at rock and roll, it all goes back to country and black soul music, back in the day, right? It all kind of evolved into this thing that we all listen to and called, whatever, right? But yeah, just an interesting little video I've got here in the show notes about Rick's diatribe about the fact that this isn't quite as simplified as calling it yacht rock as these guys called it. Because I think he even takes who's the sailing guy, Christopher Cross.
Oh, Christopher Cross.
Yeah, he's like, that's kind of like out in left field compared to the group they're trying to put these people into. That said,
I watched the video, and his point was, they just basically put together all the things that fit their narrative. I'm like, that's what documentary filmmaking is, though. Like, you do the interviews, and then you take the parts that feed the narrative that you're trying to create. Like, of course, it's not as simple as they make it in that documentary. Nothing ever is. But yeah, he seemed just a smidge serious about it, which was like part of the yacht rock documentary, which I enjoyed, was that a lot of it was tongue in cheek, right?
Firmly planted in cheek, yeah. 100%.
So that was my only sort of response to his. Like, he makes some very valid points. He's obviously a very somebody who very much loves music and loves all these creators who created so much interesting music over the years, but maybe he's taking it just a smidge seriously.
Yeah. Well, he is a grumpy old man like me, right? So.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I get it too. Obviously, we're all protective. When people start lumping the music that I grew up with and loved into other things, I'm like, hey, how about you go F yourself? Like, nobody wants to be on the receiving end of that stuff.
Well, the other thing I watched too, which I didn't talk about, I finally got a copy of a movie which I heard about but I'd forgotten about, called Squaring the Circle, which is about Hypnosis, which is the company that put together. They were friends of Pink Floyd when Pink Floyd first started up, which is how they got the job doing their album covers. But they did a whole bunch of rock album covers of all the sort of mega, progressive rock. Yes, Led Zeppelin. Pink Floyd, obviously, and Rolling Stones. They did Stones. Oh no, Paul McCartney. They did some Paul McCartney covers too, right? And they were like the go-to place for all the people who had were making all the big bucks back in the late '70s rock and roll era, right? So it was an interesting thing as an artist to sort of look at how this company started and formed, and it was really interesting sort of dissection of how things went. And then like Roger Waters came up with the idea of the flying pick over Battersea Station for the Animals cover, and then the main art guy at Hypnosis tried to take credit for coming up with the idea. Which you don't do that to Roger Waters. He'll take your head off.
Yeah, that's something he's not going to put up with.
Or Peter Grant, who was Led Zeppelin's manager. You couldn't do anything with Led Zeppelin unless you went through Peter Grant, who was sketchy to begin with, right? So yeah, so there's lots of fun stuff, right? So like he said, like they did this. I mean, the last Led Zeppelin album, they had it was like a bar with all this, a lot of character in the room, and they had 6 people in the room, and they thought, well, let's do an album cover from the perspective of each of the people. So there's 6 different versions of this album cover, right? And Peter Grant was a grumpy guy, and he just sort of said, I could sell Led Zeppelin out of a paper bag. So they made a paper bag and they put the album in it. Right? So when you bought the album, you didn't know which of the 6 covers you were getting.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, and they were saying like when Wish You Were Here first came out, that was the one where they decided to do the cellophane with black cellophane, so you couldn't see the album cover. They spent all this time building this amazing artwork, and then put a black sleeve on it. And Storm Thurgeson was saying that there are some people who just slit the side of it and pull the album out and have never seen the cover. I mean, they obviously seen the cover, but their own cover, they left the black cellophane on. And to be honest with you, I wish I had done that. I wish I had bought one and just kept it just unopened, right? So. Yeah, but it was cool. I remember when it came out, and the guy at Sam the Record Man saying to me, "Look how cool this is! It's like black. You can't see what it is." And if you watch now, after I've said all this stuff about music, go back and watch Spinal Tap.
yeah, and you realize that this was all just kind of a joke between some of the people doing this stuff too.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yep.
The best part was Noel Gallagher, right? He's a huge fan of these guys, right? Because he said, you would go to the record store, you would buy the album, you'd be sitting on the bus, you'd be looking at both sides of the album, you'd read the back liner, you'd open it up, you'd read all the lyrics, you'd read everything about it before you actually put the disc on. And he said to his daughter, she says, "Where were you?" He says, "I was over doing approval on the artwork for the album." She says, "What artwork?" He goes, the artwork for the album, like, it's a conceptual, and it's like $100,000 worth of artwork to put on a new album and that kind of stuff. And she's like, "Really? I don't know what you're talking about." He goes, "Hang on a second. See that little square on your iPhone? That little tiny square? That's the artwork that goes with the album, right? Like it's been reduced down to an icon, right?" So,
yeah. Again, it's. I think Alan Cross did an episode of Ongoing History of New Music about album art and just the evolution of album art from the inception of record albums all the way up to modern times. And it was fascinating. Like, it's something you never really think too hard about, and then you realize, like, back in the olden days, it didn't matter. Like, nobody really gave it a second thought, and then it just kept getting more people were like, "Oh, but we could also do this," and it's really fascinating to sort of explore that as an art form unto itself.
I did check. I do have the book here, the Hypnosis book that they put together before this movie came out. But there's also an album, a book called the Album Cover Album, which is. It's a 12-inch square book, like coffee table book, that had a lot of these albums that I'm talking about. It was just like one album cover after another from like the 60s to the 80s. I probably should try and grab a copy of it before it goes out of print. But that was another amazing thing because if you didn't have some of these albums, I never would have bought right back in the day. But there are some cool concepts. Like Andy Warhol did album covers for the Stones and stuff like that, right? So
yeah, and of course for Velvet Underground, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was his conceptual band, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So get your captain's hats out, folks, and let's tune in some yacht rock.
Hi, man. How was your holiday?
It went well. Yeah. Visited with family and everything.
Yeah. How's Texas?
Warm. It was usually highs in the 60s. So I was normally in t-shirts.
Jeez.
Yeah, we were warmer than. I think we're currently warmer than normal right now, right? Like I think.
Yeah, it's a little above seasonal norms right now.
We had a bit of snow for Christmas, which is nice, but.
Yeah, it's supposed to be a little snowier here the next couple of days, but yeah, I noticed that the weather is starting to plunge here into normal January in Southern Ontario right about when I'm leaving next week. So
yeah.
God bless.
Yeah.
Although I don't imagine it's going to be any better where I'm going. As a matter of fact, I imagine it's going to be much, much, much worse.
Much worse, yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna say I hope you like snow when you go to your new place. So.
Well, I am going to learn to love it again, although I've never really hated snow. I like snow very much. It's the volume of it that I think is going to take some getting used to because what they have down there is a lot more.
Well, didn't you do some co-op worky stuff when you went up to stay with my mother up in Owen Sound?
I did. I did a co-op or an internship at the Owen Sound paper from November through December. That was unpleasant. And I did a work stint when I was working at La Place in Montreal. I did that in February, which I don't recommend for anyone. That was bloody cold. Being right down by the river, where I was staying in Old Montreal in February, and it was so bitter cold, like just unbelievably cold.
Well, the first year I came to Canada in 1966 and living in Montreal, there was 3 feet of snow. And the kids were all building, like they built huge igloos, like, you could go stand inside these things and they had in the backyards, right? Because we all had these conjoined backyards where we lived. And all the kids had made these huge giant, igloos and stuff like that, which I've never seen since, but I do remember how deep the snow was, and it was like that at the cottage a couple of times when I went up with Mac a few times. But yeah.
So in scenic Jacksontown, New Brunswick, where I will be living for the next several months,
and you'll be arguing with Rogers, right? You'll be arguing with Rogers about your roaming charges.
Oh yes, I do very much so. I'm not with Rogers anymore, thank God, but I'm still be arguing with TELUS, but. It's supposed to be minus 24 with the wind tonight.
Nice.
Outside. So it'll be a little unpleasant. I'm sure my dog will learn to pee quickly. He's a hardy fellow, but he's never dealt with anything quite like that yet. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Does the house have a fireplace? I don't remember.
I imagine it must. It's a very old farmhouse, so I imagine it does. But it also has electric heating and a furnace. So I'm not worried we're going to freeze to death, but I am worried that we are going to need to go outside several times a day for exercise / pee breaks, and that by itself could be interesting. And we're right across the street from just an open farm field, so the wind will be wheel whipping around there too.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, so it'll be a new adventure. I have my new guitar, I have a dog, I have some books, and every Thursday I'm going to have a podcast to do, so I had to sign up with Elon Musk for some internet because I'm so far out in the middle of nowhere, but decided all I can do this week is fill boxes, which is what I'm really trying to focus on.
Sounds like fun.
I'm trying to pack my ridiculous amount of books up because Sherry said, and I quote, "I'm not packing your books." So
yeah, it's we were talking about that, Carol and I. Like, how many comic boxes do you have now?
A lot.
Yeah. Well, when I knew you, you had like probably 15 or 20.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I heard your house is built. Your foundation's built out of comic book boxes. Is what I heard.
Let's just say, if I wanted to build a shrine in my own honor, it it's possible. It's possible.
Oh, plus you've also got your man cave books too. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
That's the problem is that some stuff I can fit into sort of standard comic book boxes, and I went out the other day and bought another 7 of those just so I can start packing this up. But I mean, when you add in all the the deluxe edition, the absolute edition DC ones, the Marvel omnibuses, all that stuff, it's a considerable amount of volume and weight. But for the time being, I'm going to basically hand pick a couple boxes worth that I want to read over the next, we'll say, 6 months and see how it goes from there.
Yeah, every now and then I look around this space I've got here and thinking, like if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I have no idea how you guys know how valuable some of the stuff I have is, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at some point you got to go around putting price stickers on things, yeah. Well, at least if that were to happen, and we really hope it doesn't, but if it were to happen, Xavier and I would be there to be, methodically going through things as opposed to willy-nilly going through things. That's always been my saving grace is that, yeah, Sherry would throw up her hands about it, but Xavier would be like, no, we're getting every penny this stuff is worth.
Yeah. Yep, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be busy next week, and then, new adventure. So that being said, I won't be on. I'm actually traveling next Thursday, so I won't be on next week.
Okay.
So please feel free to go.
We can talk about whatever we want. Yay!
That's right. It'd be like a super short episode. You guys just be like, no, Jonathan, 30 minutes. We're in and out.
Yep.
But it'll be good. Hopefully, I'll be all set up and ready to go for the finale of Skeleton Crew. So that would be good.
Yep. And then I think Section 30 whatever is coming out end of January.
Yeah, there's a few things coming up in the next little while that look promising. So we can talk about what we want to earnestly cover and what we don't. I figured we can either do it the week of the 16th, or we can do it the week after. We can start doing our Prodigy 2 episodes a week, and that'll be sort of our anchor for a little while if we want to do that.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. What's the date there? I'm looking it up here. January 24th is when Section 31 is supposed to come out. So it's coming out on a Friday, of course, because that they just hate us. Mm-hmm. So we'll have to play that accordingly.
Yep. All right.
Well, great to catch up, guys.
Yeah, we'll see
you on the other side.
Talk to you later.
Back to later.
All right.
Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Where's the off button? Gotta be an off button here somewhere. There it is. Bye.